He didn't know it yet, but this ordinary Tuesday was about to change everything. One broken table saw, a stack of bills, and a life about to be completely rewritten. She ran an empire worth billions, but the one thing she couldn't buy back was the family she'd lost, and the freedom to choose her own life. Neither of them expected that an old, forgotten building would be the place two lonely worlds finally collided. One night, one crowd, and one question about to be asked that neither of them was ready to answer. He said it as a joke, just to save her. She answered with the truth neither of them saw coming. What she says next changes both of their lives forever. Ryan Mitchell had exactly one goal walking into that ballroom that night: shake a few hands, make sure his daughter didn't spill punch on her new dress, and be home by 9 o'clock. He never imagined that a single joke, 4 careless words meant only to rescue a stranger from an awkward moment, would end with the most powerful woman in Savannah blushing in front of 300 people and whispering a sentence that would rewrite the rest of his life. If you have ever believed that the smallest, most unplanned moments can change everything, stay with me until the very end of this story, because the answer to what happens next might surprise you more than you think. And if stories like this one move you the way they move me, do me a favor right now, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel, because there is a lot more where this came from. But to understand how a broke, grieving single father ended up standing shoulder to shoulder with a woman worth more money than he would see in 10 lifetimes, we have to rewind 3 months, back to an ordinary Tuesday morning in Savannah, Georgia. Savannah has a way of making even its most ordinary Tuesdays feel like they are waiting for something to happen. Oak trees leaning over cobblestone streets like they are keeping a secret nobody has uncovered yet. That week, the secret belonged to Ryan Mitchell, whose biggest problem in the world was a broken table saw and a stack of unpaid invoices sitting on his kitchen counter. Ryan was 35 years old, and most mornings he woke up before his alarm out of habit rather than discipline. The house on Larkspur Lane was small, a 100-year-old craftsman he had bought with his late wife Sarah back when they still believed they had all the time in the world. The workshop attached to the garage smelled like cedar and sawdust, and it was there, more than anywhere else, that Ryan felt like himself. He ran Mitchell Restoration Company, a 2-man operation most days, specializing in the kind of careful, old-fashioned woodwork that most modern contractors no longer had the patience for. Hand-cut dovetails, restored crown molding, the kind of work his father had taught him before Ryan even understood what he was learning. 2 years earlier, Sarah had gotten sick fast, the kind of fast that leaves no time to prepare. And within 4 months, Ryan had gone from husband to widower, from a family of 3 to a family of 2. He kept her chipped blue coffee mug in the cabinet, even though he never used it, and some mornings he still reached for it out of habit before catching himself. He did not talk about the grief much. He got up every day, made waffles shaped like Mickey Mouse because that was the only shape his daughter Lily would eat, and drove her to Oglethorpe Elementary before opening the shop. Lily was 7, all elbows and freckles and a gap-toothed grin, with her mother's bright green eyes and an obsession with drawing that filled sketchbook after sketchbook, with horses, houses, and increasingly detailed portraits of their orange tabby cat. Every morning followed the same small rituals. Ryan packed Lily's lunch in the dinosaur lunchbox she refused to replace even though the latch was broken, walked her past the crepe myrtles to Oglethorpe Elementary, and traded a few tired words with her teacher, Mrs. Okafor, who had a soft spot for the quiet little girl who drew instead of talking whenever a substitute showed up. On the drive home, he sometimes let himself glance at the recipe box on the passenger seat, the one full of Sarah's handwriting, and told himself he would cook one of her recipes properly one of these weekends, instead of ordering pizza again. He never quite got around to it. Grief, he had learned, did not announce itself in big, dramatic waves anymore. It showed up in small places, like the extra fork he still set on the table sometimes before catching himself, or the half-second pause before he signed school forms with just his own name instead of both of theirs. Money was the kind of tide that kept Ryan awake some nights. Big restoration companies with slick marketing had been eating into his client list for a year, and the invoices on the counter were not going to pay themselves. So when his friend and part-time employee, Marcus Reed, burst into the workshop that Tuesday morning waving his phone like it was a winning lottery ticket, Ryan almost did not look up from the cabinet door he was sanding. "Hastings Group is putting the old Exchange building restoration out to bid," Marcus said. "The whole building. Original woodwork, the grand staircase, the works. You know what that contract is worth?" Ryan knew. Everyone in Savannah's restoration trade knew. Hastings Group was the largest heritage hotel and real estate company in the state, known for turning crumbling historic buildings into boutique hotels without gutting their soul. And the Exchange building had been sitting empty and beautiful for a decade, waiting for someone with the right hands and the right heart to bring it back to life. It was the kind of job that could save a small business. It was also the kind of job that companies 20 times the size of Mitchell Restoration Company would be lining up to win. "They won't even look at our bid," Ryan said. "They will if you stop being stubborn and let me submit the portfolio," Marcus shot back. The chapel restoration alone should speak for itself. It took Marcus 3 more days of arguing before Ryan agreed, mostly because Lily, overhearing the conversation from the kitchen table, had looked up from her sketchbook and asked, very seriously, "Daddy, if you get the big job, can we get a dog?" Ryan, who could deny his daughter almost nothing, found himself submitting a bid he did not expect to win. He was wrong. 10 days later, his phone rang with a callback for an interview, and 8 days after that, wearing his one good collared shirt, Ryan Mitchell walked into the glass tower that housed Hastings Group's corporate offices, expecting a committee of junior executives. Instead, the elevator doors opened, and the CEO herself walked in to greet him personally. Olivia Hastings was 33 years old, and she moved through the world like she had never once doubted she belonged in it, even though, if she was honest with herself, she doubted it constantly. She had chestnut brown hair pulled into a low, sleek bun, hazel green eyes that missed nothing, and a light scatter of freckles across her nose that softened an otherwise composed, guarded face. She had taken over as CEO 5 years earlier, after her parents were killed in a car accident, thrust into a role she had trained for her whole life, but never actually wanted to need. Her grandfather Richard, the company's founder, had stayed on as chairman, guiding her, testing her, and lately pressuring her about things that had nothing to do with business. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, extending a hand, "I read through your portfolio myself. The Bellhaven Chapel restoration. Did you really hand-carve every replacement finial to match the originals?" Ryan, caught off guard that a CEO would know that level of detail about his work, admitted that he had. What followed was not the interview he expected. Olivia asked real questions about wood species and structural integrity and how he handled water damage in original beams, and Ryan found himself relaxing in a way he had not expected. There was something unguarded in the way she talked about the Exchange building, an old brick structure with a hand-carved staircase that she clearly loved the way some people loved family. By the end of the meeting, she had not just hired Mitchell Restoration Company, she had walked him personally down to the parking garage, something her assistant later told Marcus had never happened before with any other contractor. The Exchange building sat on the edge of Savannah's historic district. 3 stories of soot-darkened brick and arched windows, the kind of structure most people walked past without a second glance, not realizing what was hidden underneath 100 years of grime and boarded-up glass. For the next several weeks, Ryan and Marcus worked from sunup to sundown, peeling back decades of neglect to reveal walnut paneling, a cast-iron staircase, and hand-laid tile floors that made even Marcus, who had seen 100 job sites, go quiet in appreciation. Dust motes drifted through shafts of afternoon light pouring in from windows that had been boarded shut for 10 years, and every layer of grime they scraped away seemed to uncover something the building had been patiently waiting to show someone who cared enough to look. What surprised Ryan was how often Olivia showed up. CEOs, in his experience, sent assistants to check on contractors. Olivia came herself, in jeans and a blazer instead of her usual tailored suits, bringing coffee some mornings, asking questions other mornings, and once, memorably, rolling up her sleeves to help him sand a section of banister while her security detail waited awkwardly by the door. One afternoon, while stripping paint from an old support beam near the second-floor landing, Ryan uncovered 2 sets of initials carved deep into the wood, worn but legible, RH and TM, with a small carved date beneath them that had long since faded past reading. He showed Olivia, who traced the letters with her fingertips, puzzled, and admitted she had no idea who TM might have been. Neither of them thought much more of it that day, though the detail stayed lodged in the back of Ryan's mind the way small mysteries do. She told him about the exchange building's history, about how her great-grandfather had once done business inside these walls, and Ryan, without quite meaning to, started telling her about Sarah, about Lily, about the quiet ache of building a life for one less person than he had planned for. "You don't talk like most people who work for me," Olivia told him one afternoon, sitting on an overturned crate while he worked. "I don't work for you," Ryan said. "I work for the building. You just happen to sign the checks." She laughed, a real laugh, not the practiced one she gave at board meetings, and something in Ryan's chest shifted in a way he was not ready to name. On a Saturday when Ryan couldn't find a sitter, he brought Lily to the site, expecting to keep her occupied with a coloring book in the corner. Instead, Lily marched straight up to Olivia, introduced herself with the solemn formality of a 7-year-old meeting royalty, and asked if she could see inside the CEO's big glass castle sometime. Olivia, delighted, crouched down to Lily's eye level and promised that if Lily finished her latest drawing of the exchange building, she would hang it in her actual office. Lily worked on that drawing for 3 days straight, and when she proudly delivered it the following week, Olivia kept her word, framing it above her desk where visiting board members from Cole Industries would later see it during the tensest meetings of Olivia's career. A small, stubborn splash of crayon color in a room built entirely out of glass and ambition. What Ryan did not know was how much Olivia needed those mornings at the exchange building. In the glass tower across town, her life looked nothing like sanding banisters and drinking bad coffee from a paper cup. Her grandfather Richard had called another closed-door meeting that week, and Preston Cole, the polished, ambitious heir to Cole Industries, sat across the table like he already owned the place. Cole Industries wanted a controlling stake in Hastings Group, dressed up as a merger, and the pressure to make it happen had a name that made Olivia's stomach turn every time she heard it: marriage. It was not written that plainly, of course. Her father's trust simply stated that upon Richard's retirement, Hastings Group needed a strategic partnership secured, or a majority of shares would transfer to the board, a board increasingly stacked with Cole allies. Richard and Preston's father had spent a year quietly steering everyone toward the obvious solution: Olivia and Preston, married, uniting the companies, solving everything with a ring and a press release. "Your father built this company with his bare hands," Richard told her that afternoon, his voice gentler than his words. "I am simply asking you to protect it the way he would have wanted." Olivia had said no more times than she could count. Preston, for his part, leaned back in his chair with the easy confidence of a man who had never once been told no and believed it. "We make a good team on paper, Olivia," he told her once, sliding a projected earnings report across the table like it was a bouquet of flowers. "Give it time, you'll come around." She never bothered arguing with him directly anymore. Preston heard disagreement as negotiation, never as an actual answer. Richard kept bringing the subject back to the table anyway, reminding her, more each time, what she owed the family name. Her only real confidant was her assistant, Grace Kim, who listened to her vent in the elevator most evenings. "You should hear yourself when you talk about that contractor," Grace said once, not looking up from her tablet. Olivia waved her off, but she did not deny it either. The night everything shifted between Ryan and Olivia started with something small. Olivia had come by the exchange building late, well past dark, still in her work clothes, visibly rattled from another meeting with Richard and Preston. Ryan found her sitting alone on the half-restored staircase, staring at nothing. He did not ask what was wrong. He simply sat down 2 steps below her and waited, the way he had learned to wait with Lily on her hardest days, until she was ready to talk. When she finally did, it was not about the merger. It was about missing her parents, about not knowing if the woman running Hastings Group was really her, or just a role she had been assigned since the accident. Ryan listened. When he finally walked her to her car, he impulsively invited her to dinner. Not at some restaurant, but at his house, because Lily had been begging to meet the lady from the big building for weeks. Olivia said yes before she could talk herself out of it. Dinner at the house on Larkspur Lane was nothing like the galas and boardrooms Olivia usually inhabited, and that was exactly why it undid her. Lily answered the door in mismatched socks and immediately asked if Olivia was a real princess, since she lived in a castle made of glass. Olivia, charmed instantly, got down on one knee and said that no, she was not a princess, but she would very much like to see Lily's drawings if that was allowed. What followed was spaghetti with too much garlic, a kitchen table covered in crayons, and a 2-hour conversation about horses, art, and whether cats could be trained to do tricks that left Olivia laughing harder than she had in years. Later, drying dishes side by side with Ryan at the sink, she caught herself thinking that this small, loud, imperfect house felt more like home than the top floor of her own glass tower ever had. "Thank you for this," she told him quietly. "Thank Lily," Ryan said. "She's the one who insisted." "I'm thanking both of you," Olivia said, and the look that passed between them lasted just a beat too long to be nothing. Weeks later, the Exchange Building's restoration became the centerpiece of Hastings Group's annual Founders Gala, a black-tie fundraiser to be held in the very ballroom Ryan and Marcus had spent months bringing back to life. As a surprise to everyone, including Ryan, a community art contest tied to the gala selected Lily's crayon drawing of the Exchange Building, crooked windows and all, as one of the pieces to be auctioned for the Children's Hospital. Olivia personally called to invite Ryan and Lily as guests of honor. And Ryan, who had not worn a suit since his own wedding, spent an embarrassing amount of time trying to get his tie straight while Lily twirled in a pale yellow dress in front of the mirror, asking if she looked like a princess yet. "You look perfect," Ryan told her. And for a moment, he let himself think about Sarah, about how much she would have loved seeing their daughter like this, before gently setting the thought aside to be present for the night ahead. The ballroom, when they arrived, took Ryan's breath away, in a way he had not expected his own work to do. Crystal chandeliers threw warm light over marble floors, string lights wound through the old iron balcony railings he had personally restored, and a string quartet played somewhere near the restored staircase he and Marcus had spent an entire month rebuilding by hand. For a strange, quiet moment, standing in a tuxedo rental that did not quite fit right in the shoulders, Ryan felt like he belonged somewhere he absolutely did not belong. Olivia found them almost immediately, stunning in an emerald gown, and knelt to compliment Lily's dress so sincerely that Lily beamed for the rest of the night. Lily's painting sold for an amount that made Ryan's ears ring, the proceeds going straight to the Children's Hospital. And for a while, the evening felt like the best night Ryan had experienced in 2 years. Then Preston Cole found them. Preston had a way of smiling that never quite reached his eyes, and he circled Olivia all evening like he already had a claim on her. "Big night," he told her near the champagne table, close enough that Ryan, standing a few feet away with 2 drinks, caught every word. "The board's expecting an announcement soon, Olivia. Your grandfather agrees it's time." Olivia's shoulders went rigid, her polished CEO composure cracking at the edges in a way Ryan had only seen once before, on the staircase in the dark. A society columnist, sensing a story, drifted over with her phone half raised. "Olivia, is this the mystery man everyone's been asking about tonight? Who's the handsome stranger?" "Dave." Ryan felt Olivia freeze beside him, caught between Preston's expectant smirk and the columnist's raised phone. And something in him moved before he had fully decided to move. He stepped forward, slid an easy arm around Olivia's waist, and grinned like he had been born into rooms like this one. Sorry, didn't mean to keep everyone waiting, Ryan said smoothly. I'm Ryan, and this gorgeous woman right here, she's my wife. Laughter rippled through the small crowd, Preston's included, everyone assuming it was a charming icebreaker between old friends. But Olivia did not laugh. She looked up at Ryan, cheeks flushing a deep, unmistakable red, and in a voice just quiet enough that only he truly heard it over the noise, she said 4 words that stopped his heart cold. I wish that were true. The crowd chuckled again, reading it as her playing along with the joke, and the columnist, satisfied, drifted off toward the next celebrity in the room. But Ryan had heard the tremor underneath Olivia's voice, had seen the raw honesty flash across her face before she could smooth it back into composure, and for the rest of the night, he could not think about anything else. He found her 20 minutes later on the stone balcony overlooking the moonlit square, the noise of the gala muffled behind glass doors, string lights glowing in the oak trees below like the whole city was holding its breath along with him. Olivia, he started. You don't have to say anything, she said quickly, arms wrapped around herself despite the warm night. I embarrassed myself, forget it happened. I'm not going to forget it happened, Ryan said quietly, moving to stand beside her at the railing. I've been standing here trying to figure out why 4 words knocked the wind out of me, and I think it's because some part of me has been hoping you meant them since the night you sat on my staircase. Olivia turned to face him, eyes bright in the string lights. I have a merger I'm supposed to want, a grandfather who thinks he's protecting the family legacy, and a board that would love nothing more than an excuse to push me out. And somehow the only place I've felt like myself in 5 years is your kitchen table, arguing with a 7-year-old about whether cats can do tricks. I promised myself I wouldn't do this again, Ryan admitted, the words costing him something to say out loud. Not because I loved Sarah too little to move on, but because I loved her so much I didn't know how to make room for someone else without it feeling like a betrayal. And now there's you, and Lily already adores you, and I don't know what to do with any of it. Neither of them said anything else that night. They did not need to. Something had shifted, quietly and irreversibly, even walking back into the ballroom separately, even saying careful, polite goodbyes at the end of the evening. The trouble started 3 days later. Richard Hastings had heard about the wife comment secondhand through Preston, who had made sure it traveled fast and ugly, reframed as a contractor angling for the CEO's money. Richard summoned Olivia to his office, and for the first time in years, Olivia watched her grandfather's careful calm crack into something close to fear. Do you understand what you're risking? He asked her. Everything your father built, everything I built, for a woodworker. Around the same time, 2 of Ryan's longtime clients quietly canceled upcoming jobs, citing vague concerns about reliability. The Hendersons, a retired couple who had hired him to restore a built-in bookcase that had been in their family for 3 generations, called first. A young couple renovating their first home called 2 days later. Ryan listened, jaw tight, as the second caller mumbled something about hearing things around town before hanging up without finishing the sentence. Marcus, furious, discovered that someone, almost certainly connected to Preston, had been spreading rumors at the hardware store in the lumber yard that Ryan Mitchell was chasing a rich woman's checkbook instead of doing honest work. Ryan watched 2 years of careful reputation building start to crumble in a matter of days, and worse, he watched Lily notice her father's stress, asking quiet, worried questions at bedtime about whether they would have to sell the house. Marcus found him one night still in the workshop long after dark, sanding a piece of trim that did not need sanding anymore. You didn't do anything wrong, Marcus said, leaning in the doorway. I know that, Ryan said, not looking up. Doesn't mean it isn't working. He thought about Lily's question at bedtime, about the mortgage payment, due in 9 days, about a life he had rebuilt board by board, after losing Sarah, and about how quickly all of it could be undone by a rumor he could not disprove without proving it true. That fear made the decision for him. When Olivia came by the Exchange building that Friday, hopeful and a little shy, Ryan met her at the door instead of letting her inside. "I think we should stop this," he said, hating every word as it left his mouth. "Whatever this is, Lily's already lost one mother figure. I can't let her get attached to someone and then lose her too, not over a business deal I can't compete with." "This was never a business deal to me," Olivia said, hurt flashing across her face. "Maybe not to you," Ryan said, "but it's costing me my business and I have a daughter to protect. I'm sorry." He closed the door on the best thing that had happened to him in 2 years, and neither of them called the other for 11 days. Those 11 days brought Olivia to the worst decision of her professional life. With the board growing louder and Richard's deadline for a strategic partnership closing in, Olivia agreed to a press conference formally announcing merger talks with Coal Industries, the kind of announcement everyone expected would end with an engagement ring by Christmas. Grace, packing files for the event, asked her quietly if this was really what she wanted. Olivia did not answer. The press conference was held in the same ballroom where Ryan had called her his wife as a joke. Reporters filled the front rows. Richard and Preston's father sat prominently near the podium, and Olivia stood behind the Hastings Group seal, a prepared statement in her hands that she had read over a dozen times without absorbing a single word of it. She looked out at the room, at Richard's tense, hopeful face, at Preston's confident smile, and thought about her father, who had built this company on the belief that people mattered more than profit margins, and who would never have wanted his daughter married off to save a spreadsheet. She set the prepared statement down. "I was asked to stand here today and announce a merger that would secure this company's future," Olivia said, her voice steadier than she felt. "But I've spent the last several weeks relearning something my father used to say, something I'd forgotten in all the boardrooms and quarterly reports, that Hastings Group's real inheritance was never the buildings we owned, but the trust this city placed in us, one restored room at a time. This company isn't valuable because of the deals we sign. It's valuable because of what we choose to protect. The exchange building restoration downstairs wasn't completed by a merger. It was completed by a small, honest company that cared more about doing it right than doing it fast, and it reminded 300 people at our gala last month what this city is actually worth saving." She took a breath. "I won't be announcing an engagement today to Preston or to anyone chosen for me, because there's a man in this city who once joked in front of a crowd just like this one that I was his wife. And I told him quietly that I wished that were true. I'm done wishing." The room erupted into stunned murmurs, cameras flashing, phones lighting up across the press row as reporters typed faster than they could think, and Preston's father half rising from his seat in fury, but Olivia was no longer looking at any of them. She had spotted Ryan standing near the back doors, Lily's small hand in his, having come, Grace later admitted, because she had personally called and begged him to give Olivia one more chance to be heard. Olivia stepped down from the podium and walked straight through the stunned crowd toward him, and Ryan, heart hammering, met her halfway. It was Richard's voice that stopped the room's chaos, rising above the noise, not with anger, but with something that sounded almost like relief. "Let her go," he told the board, still seated, still staring. "All of you, let her go." What no one expected, least of all Olivia, was what her grandfather said next, once the ballroom had mostly emptied, and only Ryan, Olivia, Lily, Marcus, and Richard remained standing near the restored staircase. Richard walked slowly toward Ryan, studying his face the way a man studies something he has been waiting decades to see again. "Mitchell," Richard said, "that name has been sitting on a bid sheet in my office for months, and I still haven't told you why I made sure you won that contract over 4 larger firms." He paused, something raw crossing his weathered face. "Your father's name was Tom Mitchell, wasn't it?" Ryan went very still. "How did you know that?" "Because 40 years ago, Tom Mitchell and I built the company that became Hastings Group together. Out of a rented workshop not much bigger than the one you work in now," Richard said. "We were partners and friends until a financial crisis nearly sank us both. And I made the decision to buy out his share to save what we'd built. He never forgave me for it, and honestly, I never forgave myself. He moved on, started his own small restoration business, and we lost touch completely. I heard he'd passed a few years back and never had the chance to make it right. Richard's voice caught. When I saw the name Mitchell Restoration Company on that bid sheet, I nearly fell out of my chair. I made sure you got that contract. Not because I expected any of this, but because I owed your father a debt I could never repay directly, and giving his son a fair chance felt like the closest I'd ever get. The initials carved into that beam upstairs, RH and TM, those are ours. Your father carved them the week we signed our first lease. The silence that followed was heavy with everything none of them had known to say to each other. Lily, never one to stay quiet for long, tugged on Olivia's gown and asked, in the matter-of-fact way only a 7-year-old can manage, "Does this mean you're not a fake princess anymore, and you can just be our real one?" It broke the tension exactly the way she meant it to, and for the first time that day, everyone in the room laughed. The trust clause, it turned out, had never required a coal merger specifically, only a strategic partnership strong enough to secure the company's future, a definition Richard, as chairman, had full authority to interpret. He interpreted it that same week as the historic preservation partnership already growing between Hastings Group and Mitchell Restoration Company, a decision that satisfied the board, delighted the city's preservation society, and quietly, permanently ended any further talk of a coal industries merger. Preston, exposed within days as the source of the rumors that had nearly destroyed Ryan's business, quietly resigned from any involvement with Hastings Group altogether. 6 months later, the Exchange Building reopened as a boutique hotel to a line stretching down the block, its restored staircase gleaming under the same chandeliers that had watched Ryan and Olivia fall in love. On the same balcony where they had first admitted the truth to each other, Ryan got down on one knee, no cameras, no reporters, just Lily standing beside him clutching a small velvet box she had insisted on carrying herself. Olivia said yes before he even finished the question. They were married the following spring in the courtyard of the very building that had brought them together. Oak trees draped in string lights, Lily walking down the aisle scattering rose petals with the seriousness of a girl who understood exactly how important her job was. Richard walked Olivia partway down the aisle himself, whispering something to her that made her laugh through happy tears, something about an old friend named Tom, who would have loved this. Marcus stood up as Ryan's best man, adjusting his tie every few minutes out of nerves that were not even his own. And Grace, seated in the front row, cried through the entire ceremony despite insisting beforehand that she never cried at weddings. Inside, near the restored staircase, a small brass plaque now marked the beam where 2 sets of initials had been carved decades apart, a quiet reminder that some debts get repaid in ways nobody could have planned for. At the reception, when the band slowed for the first dance, Lily tugged on the hem of Olivia's dress and asked, shy for the first time all day, if it would be okay to call her mom now. Olivia knelt right there on the dance floor in her wedding gown and told her it would be the greatest honor of her life. So if you have ever wondered whether the smallest, most unplanned moments can truly change the entire direction of a life, remember Ryan Mitchell, a broke, grieving single father who made one small joke to save a stranger from an awkward moment, never imagining it would lead him to the family he thought he'd lost the chance to have. Sometimes the wildest, most unbelievable stories are the true ones. If this story moved you even half as much as it moved me telling it, make sure you're subscribed, because there are so many more stories like this one still to come.